Get out. This isn't your property." The voice tore through the quiet Texas morning, sharp and furious. A woman in a pressed business suit stood at my gate, her hand brandishing a stack of papers like weapons of war. I had purchased this 150-year-old ranch for $1 just 3 months earlier, a miracle deal, or so I believed. Now, this stranger was shouting that I had no rightful claim to the land, insisting it belonged to her so-called community. $200,000 of my life's savings were anchored in this place. What I had once imagined as my salvation was beginning to feel like the seed of my ruin. The Harrison County Courthouse basement carried the stillness of a forgotten tomb. Fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, spilling pale light across a floor of cracked linoleum that had surrendered decades ago. I balanced my laptop on my knees, the cold of the metal chair biting through my jeans. My coffee sat untouched. Smoothly. Rather than declare bankruptcy, he chose to donate the land for a charitable deduction. The implication chilled me. If true, my $1 purchase might have inherited Dollar's entire debt. Under the table, I opened my phone, searching Texas No to reseal changes. The browser crawled like it was wading through tar. I found a legal forum thread referencing a format update from the previous summer, proof I couldn't access fully from this dead zone. I snapped a photo of Brandon's document and sent it to Alex with the single word, archive. Brandon waited in composed silence, the kind of man who built patience by the minute. His smile reminded me of a dentist reassuring a patient moments before drilling. I studied the signature again. The pixels were too precise, too clean against the rough noise of scanned paper. Maybe it meant nothing, or maybe it meant everything. Of course, this creates a delicate problem, Brandon said finally. You purchased land already designated for community ownership. Technically, you own the complications, not the property. My mouth went dry. Are you saying my purchase isn't valid? Not invalid, he said, leaning back with effortless confidence. Just a broken bar complicated, and resolving it in court would cost far more than the land itself. Texas law tends to favor the established community over the lone claimant. He paused, letting the everything. If Jake's been here, I want to know what he found. He reached his car, engine off, coasting away under cover of darkness. Heart pounding. Tyler was alive here, but Karen knew the truth was closing in. The war over Morrison Ranch had escalated beyond land disputes. Jake spread Tyler's files across his kitchen table, cold coffee untouched as he pieced together the scale of the fraud. Maplewood Estates wasn't just an HOA, it was a laundering front masked as community management. Prairie Landscaping Services had received over $200,000 for beautification projects that never happened. The company existed only on paper, owned by Brandon's law firm. Residents had done the actual landscaping as unpaid volunteers. Sunset Security Solutions collected $50,000 yearly for neighborhood patrols, yet Karen's brother-in-law in Oklahoma had never set foot there. Every emergency assessment for roof repairs, parking lots, and playground maintenance had been charged repeatedly, the money siphoned through fake vendors, while residents were pacified with excuses about permits and bad weather. Jake pressed play on Tyler's recordings. Karen's voice filled the room, tired, desperate. Brandon, Thomas's therapy bills are draining us. Insurance won't cover enough. I'm months behind on the mortgage. Brandon replied. Friends and neighbors, she began, her voice warm and practiced. We're here tonight to confront an unprecedented threat to our community's safety and stability. Her first slide appeared a photograph of my ranch, taken from an angle that made it look neglected and menacing. Shadows deepened artificially, as though rot and decay had settled in. For 15 years, she continued smoothly, we've built something remarkable: a safe streets where children play freely, stable property values that protect your investments, and standards that preserve our quality of life. Heads nodded throughout the crowd. Whatever else Karen had done, she had real accomplishments. Mr. Morrison, she declared, represents a disruption to everything we've worked to protect. His so-called business operations will bring traffic, noise, and strangers into our peaceful neighborhood. Worse, he's spreading false accusations about our financial integrity. Charts appeared on the screen, a clean, professional-looking whole records that painted a picture of flawless management. Karen had prepared well, creating an alternate version of reality polished enough to survive surface scrutiny. "These lies aren't just false," she said firmly. "They're dangerous. They erode trust in the institutions that protect us, encourage rebellion against legitimate authority, and threaten the stability that allows vulnerable residents like my son to thrive." Several parents of children with special needs nodded with sympathy. Karen's emotional appeal struck its mark. "Tonight," she announced, "we vote on emergency measures to safeguard our community from disruption and harassment." The proposal was devastating: authorization for legal action to remove me from the property, restraining orders to stop communication with residents, and a complete ban from community spaces and events. When she opened the floor for discussion, the first few speakers were clearly handpicked supporters. They praised Karen's leadership, celebrated her dedication, and demanded swift punishment for outside agitators. Mrs. Anderson rose next, her voice steady with practiced loyalty. "Karen has guided us through property disputes, natural disasters, and countless challenges for 15 years. I trust her judgment completely." Then, Mr. Wilson stood to follow. "My property values have risen 40% since Karen assumed leadership. That's solid evidence of capable governance," declared Mr. Wilson confidently. But before the applause could swell, a steady voice rose from the middle rows. "I'd like to hear Mr. Morrison's response to these accusations." The room went still. Karen's expression hardened, her composure briefly faltering. "This meeting is for community members only," she replied sharply. Mrs. Johnson stood, holding a folder of bylaws like a weapon. "Our governing documents grant owners the right to pre-register speakers and present exhibits," she said firmly. "I submitted Mr. Morrison's request yesterday. He's entitled to 5 minutes." A wave of murmurs rippled through the hall. Karen had no legal way to object. Her eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside as I approached the podium. The weight of hundreds of eyes followed me. Faces showed curiosity, doubt, resentment, and a faint glimmer of hope. "Thank you," I began steadily. "I'm not here to